Let's talk about Australian sporting dynasties. A few names probably pop into your head, right? But what if I told you one of the most dominant, most consistent franchises in the country's entire history is a basketball team from out west? Yep, the Perth Wildcats. For decades, they've been the team to beat. But how on earth did they build this empire? And maybe more importantly, can it actually last? Let's dive in and break down the blueprint of a dynasty.
Okay, we're going to start with a single powerful number, 10. That's the record for the most championships in the National Basketball League. And to put that into perspective for you, it's 4 more than any other team. In fact, get this, they're the only franchise in NBL history to have won titles in 4 different decades.
Then there's this next number. And honestly, it's kind of mind-boggling. 35. From 1987 all the way to 2021, the Wildcats made the playoffs for 35 consecutive seasons. I mean, that's a streak that's completely unmatched in all of Australian professional sport. It just speaks to this incredible level of consistency, a culture of winning that's almost hard to believe. Which brings us to the ultimate test of that very culture. Because what happens when the face of the franchise, your 5-time MVP, your modern-day superstar Bryce Cotton, what happens when he leaves for a rival team? Well, that's exactly what happened after the 2025 season. And now, everything they've built is being put to the ultimate test. So to really understand how they might get through this, we've got to go back, way back to the beginning. See, this success wasn't some happy accident. It was built on a really powerful foundation that was laid decades ago. What was so wild is just how quickly they got into the habit of winning. After, some early struggles in the 80s, the franchise just exploded. They snagged their first ever championship in 1990, immediately followed it up with a back-to-back title in 91, and then added 2 more by the year 2000. Right from the jump, a standard was set. Winning wasn't a hope, it was the expectation. So what was the secret sauce? Well, the recipe was a mix of a few key things. First off, you had visionary ownership that saw the team's massive potential. Then you had these iconic, legendary players like Ricky Amazing Grace and James Crawford. And on top of all that, they played this exciting brand of basketball summed up as run, stun, and have some fun. And it just completely captured the city's imagination. And if you want to see just how ambitious they were, look no further than this. In the late 80s, they were playing at Perry Lake Stadium in front of maybe 800 people. By 1990, they moved to the Perth Entertainment Centre with a capacity of 8,000. We're talking a 10-fold increase. This wasn't a team that was just happy to compete. They were dead set on becoming a major event. But, after that 4th championship in 2000, they started to slide. A pretty long title drought began, and the franchise that once looked totally unstoppable, well, it nearly vanished completely. The contrast here is just staggering. By 2009, the club was on the absolute brink of financial collapse. We're talking literally weeks away from folding. But then, by the end of the very next decade, they were right back on top as the most successful franchise in the league. So how does a turnaround that dramatic even happen? Well, the answer is in this simple but totally revolutionary philosophy. Under new owner Jack Bendat, the club had this huge realization. Just winning games wasn't going to cut it long term. The real path to a sustainable dynasty was winning over the entire community. And listen, this wasn't just talk. It was a cold, calculated business strategy. They turned the games into family-friendly entertainment. School visits shot up from just a handful to over 200 every single year. Players were required to complete 350 hours of community engagement. They weren't just getting fans anymore. They were systematically building this loyal, passionate base that would become famously known as the Red Army. And what happened next? Well, that off-court community strategy became the rocket fuel for an unprecedented era of on-court dominance. The second great Wildcats dynasty was officially born. And the rewards were, well, they were spectacular. This period was an absolute avalanche of success. They kicked off the decade with a title in 2010, and then they just didn't stop, winning 6 championships in 11 seasons. That included 2 sets of back-to-back titles. They were without a doubt the kings of the NBL. And that Red Army, they showed up. Big time. When the team moved into the brand new Perth Arena in 2012, they consistently packed it with over 13,000 fans, creating the most electric and, frankly, intimidating home court advantage in the whole league. At this point, it was undeniable. The community had bought in. Of course, every great dynasty needs its superstar.
And for the Wildcats, that guy was Bryce Cotton. He was the on-court architect of this incredible run, a 5-time league MVP who just knew how to deliver in the biggest moments and really personified their dominance.
Which brings us right back to where we started. It's now January 2026. The cheers from last season have faded, and a massive question mark is hanging over the entire franchise. So let's not beat around the bush here. With Bryce Cotton's departure in the 2025 offseason, the single most successful period in the club's incredible history has officially come to an end. So after all that, what have we learned? The blueprint for this Wildcats dynasty really seems to have 4 key pillars. It all starts with that foundational winning culture forged back in the 90s. Then came that game-changing community-first model that built the Red Army. You add in an unwavering commitment to excellence, and finally, you find that perfect superstar at the perfect time. And all of this leaves us with one final big question, and not just for the Wildcats, but for any great team. Is the culture, the foundation, the blueprint, is it all truly bigger than any one player? Well, I guess the next chapter for the Perth Wildcats is going to be the answer.